spend. And so I'll do the best I can,
Life's evening sun is sinking low, a few more days, and I must go,
to meet the deeds that I have done, where there will be no setting sun, to be a child of God each day. My light must shine along the way. I'll sing His praise while ages roll, and strive to help some troubled soul.
Life's evening sun is sinking low, a few more days, and I must go,
to meet the deeds that I have done, where there will be no setting sun, The only life that will endure is one that's kind and good and pure. And so for God, I'll take my stand. Each day I'll lend a helping hand.
Life's evening sun is sinking low, a few more days, and I must go,
to meet the deeds that I have done, where there will be no setting sun, While going down life's weary road, I'll try to live some traveler's load. I'll try to turn the night to day, make flowers bloom along the way.
Life's evening sun is sinking low, a few more days, and I must go,
to meet the deeds that I have done, where there will be no setting sun,
Life's evening sun is sinking low, a few more days, and I must go,
to meet the deeds that I have done, where there will be no setting sun, All hail the power of Jesus' name, let angels prostrate fall. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown Him Lord of all. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown Him Lord of all. Ye chosen seed of Israel's race, He ransomed from the fall. Hail Him who saves you by His grace, and crown Him Lord of all. Hail Him who saves you by His grace, and crown Him Lord of all. Let every kindred, every tribe on this terrestrial ball, to Him all majesty ascribe, and crown Him Lord of all. To Him all majesty ascribe, and crown Him Lord of all. Oh, that with yonder sacred throng we at His feet may fall. We'll join the everlasting song, and crown Him Lord of all. and crown him Lord of all. You are the words and the music. You are the song that I sing. You are the melody. You are the harmony. Praise to your name I will bring. You are the Lord of lords. You are the mighty God. You are the King of all kings. So now I give back to you the song that you gave to me. You are the song that I sing. You are the words and the music. You are the song that I sing. You are the melody. You are the harmony. Praise to your name I will bring. You are the Lord of lords. You are the mighty God. You are the King of all kings. So now I give back to you the song that you gave to me. You are the song that I sing. My God and I go in the fields together. We walk and talk as good friends should and do. We clasp our hands, our voices ring with laughter. My God and I walk through the meadows new. We clasp our hands, our voices ring with laughter. My God and I walk through the meadows new. He tells me of the years that went before me, when heavenly plans were made for me to be, when all was but a dream of dim conception, to come to life as bird and glory see. When all was but a dream of dim conception, to come to life as bird and glory see.
My God and I will go foraying together. We'll walk and talk as good friends should and do. This earth will pass, and with it common trifles. But God and I will go unendingly.
This earth will pass, and with it common trifles. But God and I will go unendingly. Jesus, you're the sweetest name of all. Jesus, you always hear me when I call. Oh Jesus, you pick me up each time I fall. You're the sweetest name of all. Jesus, how I love to praise your name. Jesus, you're still the first, the last, the same. Oh Jesus, you died and took away my shame. You're the sweetest name of all. Jesus, you're the soon and coming King. Jesus, we need the love that you can bring. Oh Jesus, we lift our voices up and sing. You're the sweetest name of all. Arise and sing, ye children of Zion, for the Lord has delivered thee. Arise and sing, ye children of Zion, for the Lord has delivered thee. Open up your hearts and rejoice before him. Open up your hearts and rejoice before him. Open up your hearts and rejoice before him, for the King is your God. Arise and sing, ye children of Zion, for the Lord has delivered thee. Arise and sing, ye children of Zion, for the Lord has delivered thee. Open up your heart hearts and rejoice before Him. Open up your hearts and rejoice before Him. Open up your hearts and rejoice before Him, for the King is your God. Open up your hearts and rejoice before Him. Open up your hearts and rejoice before Him. Open up your hearts and rejoice before Him, for the King is your God. Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation.
All right, Esther, yes. So, as we think about the book, we come back to, of course, the fascinating reality that, and perplexing a little bit, it's amazing that God is not mentioned one time in the book, and yet He is the real overall shadow figure that's in this book. His sovereign hand, His providential working. And we talked a little bit about that a couple of times. We're going to kind of come back to that. It is beyond amazing when you look at how God arranged everything in this book, the events that happened. And this isn't the only book in the Bible. We looked at the book of Ruth as well, right? But I'm going to tell you, this is like 10 times ramped up. You remember the little story of Ruth. That was a great little story. And it was powerful, God's providential hand. But it really, when you look at the pieces that were involved in this story, it's incredible. It's incredible. How God got everything through this from start to finish. And it's an encouragement that God is at work even when we don't see Him. Right? We're just like the disciples were. Unless they could see it, oh Lord, where's the bread? Where's the fish? Where's the food? How are we going to feed these people? We don't have any provisions, and we just, how are we going to, Lord, how are we going to, there's these walls, or there's this Red Sea in front of us. And again, I'm not minimizing that. If we were right there on the Red Sea, we'd be going, Lord, how are we going to get through this body of water? So, we get it. But God shows us time and time again how He works. Now, this is the equivalent. What we need to do is go back and rewatch the movie. Now, I know some of you are like me. You've got your favorites. You know every little scene and everything ties together in a story, in a movie. And that's a great way to watch. And now that's a great way to read the book back. And we're going to be running through a lot of this here. I want to touch on. And so, buckle in, put your seatbelt on. We got to run through this, and we'll have some. I want to get through some first things first, and I have some stuff I really want to slow down a little more here and there. But let me start with some things. God orchestrated the king's banquet, both banquets, in such a way that Vashti would be deposed for refusing the invitation. You got to see God's hand there. God arranged the pageant, so to speak, in order to choose a new queen. It's God's doing. God set up His providence for Esther as a Jew to be one of those taken. Now, not by choice, she didn't want to go. None of the young women wanted to go. If you were young, if you were a virgin, if you were beautiful, you're in. Go get them. Bring them to the palace. Yeah, I don't know how to say this. God works in a often real world, grindy, gritty, dirty environment. God works in, I guess the thing I was thinking is like, you've been in a restroom on a truck stop or a place, and you walk in the bathroom and you go, I think I'll wait. You ever been there? I don't think I want to touch anything in here. saw that more on Monday, didn't you, when you went in each morning? And God works in that. We've taken God out of that and we've put him in a laboratory, a clean white room. Everything is pure and no germs, or we've taken these stories and we've taught them in such a way that it's all clean and nice, and then we're shocked that God is working in a harem contest to pick the next queen, because that's what he's doing. That's what he's doing. He works in the real, everyday, ordinary. Does that mean God approves of the things that people are doing? And no, of course not. Did God approve of the Persian Empire and these maniac, egotistical men having a harem of women that they could have sexual relations with on the drop? Did God approve any of that? No. Was that God's will? Specifically, that no. But does that mean God says, well, I can't, I'm not going in there. We're going to the next stop down the road. Does God do this ever? God says what? Let's go to work. Go ahead.
That's the people that needs God the most that's in situations
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. God's not.
Jesus didn't come to
He's not threatened.
to save. He came
Yeah.
to sinners.
He's not intimidated. He's not scared off. You know? And I think we have to see that in these stories, because that's what's happening here. There's nothing good from our perspective often about these situations, but it doesn't stop God from working. And God, of course, gave special favor. Let me quick. To Esther in the eyes of the eunuchs, making her stand out. Gave her additional privileges. Gave her special private quarters. God positioned Mordecai within the gates so that he would be in the right place at the right time, hearing the right things to uncover the plot. God had Esther in the perfect position at the perfect time to preempt the assassination. Mordecai in the perfect place again. God delayed the rewarding of Mordecai. Remember that? Mordecai does this great thing. He brings the plot to Esther to give to the king, and then nothing's done to reward him. And he just has to go back to the city gate. Remember, that's where he worked. And just do his job the next day. Well, I guess they don't appreciate. I mean, he had to have thought that. Hey, he's human, right? You've done something for your boss, your company, and you go, well, they didn't really seem to appreciate that at all. They really said nothing. Mordecai just goes back to work. God delays that. God had Haman promoted at the exact time. Who Mordecai in the king's gate would refuse to bow down. God set Haman up, now enraged, to convince the king to issue that edict to annihilate the Jewish people. This is all from our standpoint, from a story standpoint again, and we cheat because we know how the story ends. Imagine putting yourself living it. You don't know how it's going to end, do you? And from our perspective, we're saying, what are you doing, God? Your people are in exile. Good people are losing their daughters to these egotistical maniac men to have a harem of women, and they're taking these young virgins, and Mordecai is not rewarded when he does stand out and do something good, and then Haman is a murderous villain, evil man that wants to. And God's like, no, this is all perfectly going to plan. God's like on the throne, saying everything is proceeding exactly. We have to remember that this is all happening in this way. Joseph. And we were talking about God working and that, and again, the difficult. And we talked about, I mentioned Job as an example. And God positioned Job. God gave Satan permission. God allowed Job to be inflicted. All of this, God allowed Haman to what? To do these things. Right? He's like, yeah, okay, you want to do evil? You want to commit genocide? Okay, yeah, come on.
Well, it's kind of like raising your grown children. You can talk to them, you can disapprove of what they're doing all you want, but if they're grown, there's not really anything you can do about it.
Right.
So God kind of, when people decide they're going to do all these horrible things, God kind of stands back a lot of times with hands off and says, go ahead.
Yeah.
He can always cause good.
Yes, he is. He is working that good, isn't he? God had Haman promoted again. God sets up Haman. God had Mordecai again in the perfect place at the perfect time. God had Esther positioned. We talked about that. God controlled the outcome of these decrees. Think about this. One of the commentators was talking about this, and I thought about this, but I spent a little more time thinking about it and kind of reading a little more. Have you thought about the fact that God had the Jews fight civilians? Mercenaries for hire, but still civilians. God did not have the Persian army set up to fight the Jews. Let me tell you something. The Jews fight the Persian army, that's a whole different. But they're going to fight civilians who are hired. I mean, they're hired, but they're doing it for money, but they're not trained like the Persian army. The Jewish people are not going head to head with the Persian army. That's important. God made that happen. That it's going to be men for hire. Now you say, well, there's a big difference. These men are elite military soldiers. They're so confident they think they can keep going over to Greece and take that great nation of people, but they keep losing. And I think God, by the way, newsflash, I think God's in all of that. Was God going to use the Greek people? Well, yeah, he was going to use them. Persian ain't doing anything, but God's not setting up. And so, but anyway, God made their fighting civilians. Did God control the outcome of the lot? The poor? The dice? Right? God determines the outcome of the cast. God gave the Jewish, the months, everything. God gave Esther favor in the king's eyes to put, remember? So he would hold out the scepter, even though she was uninvited. God gave her wisdom. Oh, go ahead, Ron. Yeah, jump in here if you got something. If you think of something, jump in here on one of these points.
Interfered with Xerxes' sleep.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Yeah. God controlled all of this. God put wisdom in Esther's request to invite them to a banquet. And then the odd request, I got a little line I wrote. Anytime I write these drama scripts, I have to always go back and edit them and say, you're writing to 4- and 5-year-olds. Not dumb it down. Get it down their level. So, and then I also have to say, got to put some more humor in it, Robert. Kids like to laugh a little. So I have one of the lines, I'm going to get it through the king, Xerxes. I'm going to make him kind of look like a buffoon, if that's okay for everybody, a little bit this week at VBS. Because that's what he is, basically. So I've got the king summarizing to Esther, so you've invited me to a banquet to invite me to another banquet. It's kind of absurd, isn't it? You want me to come to a banquet so you can invite me to the... It's odd. But Esther is, what do we say? She's reading the room. God is leading her, I believe, as she seeks him, and they prayed. And so, and then what do we say? On the same night, after that first banquet, Haman feels good, but he runs into, once again, Mordecai, who won't what? Won't bow. And so he goes home now because Mordecai won't bow. And that is going to set up, of course, some things with him. Ron mentioned on that same night, again, after the first banquet, God gave the king a case of insomnia. He can't sleep. So what does he want to do? He wants to hear about himself. So he has the records read. And they just so happen to come across from a few years back, what? Mordecai's foiled thing that wasn't rewarded. What did we do to reward him? Nothing. We talked about that. These kingdoms operate on bribes and keeping people to that they will stop more of these and that they'll come forward. And I mean, this is all they operate. So you got to reward people. And so he's like, we have to reward that. And then on that very same night, Haman, remember he's telling his wife and his friends, and they're just like, hanging, put him on a pole. We'll talk about that. I may preach a couple of sermons on Esther this week and next week, but if I do, I'm going to talk about that point. When we have desires and decisions and we listen to people, but nonetheless, he thinks that's a great idea. And so he's so excited. Again, the same night, early that next morning, the same 24-hour period, he's the first in the palace, even though he's the prime minister. And the king is still looking at, hey, we got to reward Mordecai now. Who's in the palace? And boom, who walks in at the same time? Haman, the second in command. He can make it happen. Yeah, he can make it happen. And so Haman arrives at the king's palace at the right time. The king asked, what should we do, of course, to reward the man that he has pleasure in, and who he delights in. And of course, Haman thinks he's talking about him and describes what he's always wanted, basically to be king. And we're going to reenact that one too, by the way. We're going to prance Mordecai through this auditorium with the kids on a horse. Well, sort of a horse, but you'll have to come see. Kids are going to like it. It's going to be fun.
Who's going to be Haman?
Well, we got to stay on point here. I don't want to get into VBS stuff. Okay, so Mordecai is, he says, do this, everything you said, the robe, the ring, the horse throughout the city, saying this is the one the king delights in, do for Mordecai. And we would love to have been a fly on the wall to see Haman's face. And then early that next morning, the Haman's wife tells, after he says everything that's happened, remember she drops a truth bomb, right? You're toast. If these are the Jews, if Mordecai's a Jew, and she knows something about the Jewish people, doesn't she? Maybe she should have thought a little more quickly before she said to her husband, once you, start murdering people, but nonetheless, it's all God's perfect timing. All God's perfect timing. And then at the second banquet, God again puts it on Esther's heart. She plays it exactly the way she needs to play it. She doesn't come out and just start with accusing Haman. She says, I'm threatened. My people are threatened. She draws the king in. She doesn't just start pointing fingers. And then, of course, he asked who would do this. Now she's ready to lower the boom. Haman. Now I want you to think about God got the king out of the room. Because we need to put the finishing touches. I mean, I think probably Haman was toast. But it's almost like cherry on top. God's going to make sure. Just in case. King leaves the room because he's upset, right? Esther's telling him all this. She's kept her identity secret. Haman's plotted to wipe out people that have been clearly loyal to him, the Jews, Mordecai. So he's got to step out of the room. Haman's going to what? Fall down and kind of start grabbing Esther. He's going to come back in the room, and that's going to be the cherry on top, right? You think you can do this, molest my queen in front of me? Again, I think Haman was already toast, but it was like, that was probably it. And so They're like, hey, he built a 75-foot gallows to hang Mordecai. Perfect. We've already got it ready to go. Take him and impale him, not hang him, but we're sometimes use the word hang. But at the exact same time that all this happens, he's hung on the gallows that pole he had planned for Mordecai. God orchestrated these events where now Mordecai is in a position of power. Esther is now going to go before the king and plead for her people, and Mordecai is now in charge. He's the Jew who is now going to be the second most powerful man, is now in charge of the counterattack for the Jewish people. Not some Persian next in command. No, God takes him from the gate, by the way. This was an honorable position, but this was not a high-ranking position. Mordecai was not like in the inner circle. He's not able to get in the palace. He's right outside the palace. So he's elevated. He's bypassed. The king bypasses and elevates him. So now he can oversee this plan and for the second edict. And so God equips the Jews to be victorious, to fight back. God gave them favor in the eyes of the Persians. Remember we said that, what's the language? They didn't become Jews. We said that. Remember, they didn't convert. But they said, hey, we align with them. God gave them favor in the eyes of the people. And God had Esther to hang Haman's 10 sons. God arranged the Jews to institute the feast of Purim. We talked about that, although it's not in the law. It is a non-biblical feast that was established. God did all of this. But you can't exactly just, it's not what? So on the first viewing, what? It's not so obvious. But when you now put it all on the table and put it out, kind of like a prosecutor would lay out a case, go through the evidence. Maybe he says, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have 270 pieces of evidence we're going to show you. That's a lot of evidence, right? I'm just throwing a number. I have no idea what a big murder trial or big case would be. I don't know. I'm just making a number up. But God is putting it all in such a way now, arranging it that what can we see? What's going to be, the jury needs to come back with the verdict of what when it comes to God? Well, that he is what? All powerful. Who made all this happen? God did. Can anyone look at the book, look at the history, and come to a conclusion that this was not God? I mean, are you telling me all this was just happening? I mean, the Jews would have to be, I'm telling you, the most luckiest people who have ever walked the earth, because they have always been on the outskirts. They've been enslaved. They've been persecuted. They've been sent into captivity. They've been ridiculed. They have, nation after nation, have maligned them, have called them, notice these names, the Jew Mordecai. When you read that in the text, what do you think that's just identifying him as a, what? It's used as a what? It's a slur. It's always been the Jews' history that they've never been wanted except by God. Why? Because God, he chose them. That's the only reason. So he wanted to bless all people through them, not just them be his special people for nobody else to be special to God, but God wanted them to be blessed. And so from their time of Abraham all the way through the Old Testament to the time of Jesus, God's hand is there in every story we see. And the book of Esther is huge because it involves this powerful nation of Persia and people who are spread throughout the kingdom, Jews. And particularly, we'll talk about this in the sermon, I'll mention this. Esther's not exactly who we want to broadcast on the front end that this is how you should be. She's hiding her identity. She's compromised her faith. Yes, I'll talk about that in the sermon. Haman doesn't know she's a what? Does she not practice Torah? Is she not observing the Sabbath? Is she keeping herself from pagan I don't know. Apparently she's not. Now, I'm not saying she's a godless heathen, but she's not an image of faithfulness when we first see her. She's an image of, let's just hide and go along to get along. I mean, Mordecai has to what to her finally? Hey, you got to what? You got to do this. And she's like, hey, I didn't become queen to go die. I'd like to. And he says, hey, you're not going to be spared. So what I'm saying is, she had to compromise. She had to sleep with him. We know that. I mean, I'll just get it out there. They weren't in there playing cards all night when they met. You say, well, she had to. No, she didn't have to. Daniel didn't have to bow down. I know there's some differences there. I'm just saying God's using imperfect people is what we're saying. So it's not like God is, this is so obvious, the hand of God, how he's doing this. That he's providing all of this. And yet it is done in the realm of providence, not in the realm of the supernatural, miraculous, if you will. God did not intervene by way of the miraculous. There is no miraculous act of God in these stories. Now, it is supernatural in the sense that anything God does it's going to be supernatural. It's going to be not human, from above, so to speak. But I'm saying there's no healing, there's no Red Sea parting, there's none of that.
Any non-believer who would read the story would just call it coincidence.
Yeah. 270 in a row coincidences. Right. It speaks to how God chooses to work his divine providence in our lives. How does he do that? He moves, he arranges, he manipulates, he controls, he dictates circumstances, events, people in such a way that'll serve his purpose. Now, if you think that is an easy thing to also come alongside human will, because God does all of that, ding, 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 and he does not violate our what? Yeah, free choice. They're not overtaken by God to do this. But God makes them do it. How? Hey, you're asking me to explain that? Good luck, Matt. Go ahead.
But does God actually make them do it, or does he just simply use their personality and characteristics to do it? I mean, because if God is ubiquitous, then he already knows the kind of shenanigans they're going to be up to.
Sure.
So he just uses that to. I mean, look at Judas.
Yeah.
I mean, Judas had a propensity for thievery.
Right.
So God uses that.
Yeah.
But the thing about the whole book of Esther is it's for the Christian, it's an obvious demonstration of God's providence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
Yep.
We're always wondering about in our lives. Well, God's not really doing this, that, or the
Right.
other. Well, how do you know until you see the results?
Matter of fact, we run to the opposite. Why would God allow me to get fired?
No.
Not asking the question, what could God be doing
What's next?
in this, what's next? We just run to the immediately, well, God, why didn't you do this for me? And again, I'm right there with you. I have the pity parties too. Why did they do that? Why did they, God, I thought you wanted me to serve you, and I thought I did the right thing, and what did we talk about? Oh, I said we again. I talked about that Wednesday night at Hinton. Joseph does the right thing, right? He doesn't have sexual relations with Miss Potiphar, and he is not rewarded. He's punished, isn't he, for doing the right thing? So when we do the right thing, sometimes we're going to get punished. And we're going to say in those moments, it's easily to think, what? God? I'm not going to fight. If this is what you do, Mordecai, going back to Mordecai, could have said, I'm being faithful to you, and this is how you reward me? No, I'm not going to be faithful anymore. No, Mordecai just goes back to work. Yeah. Kathy?
And 1 Peter 2:20, it says, for what credit is it if you are beaten for your faults, you take it patiently?
Mm-hmm.
But when you do good and suffer, if you take it patiently, this is commendable before God.
Yeah. I love what Charles Spurgeon wrote. It has been well said that the book of Esther is a record of wonders without a miracle. And therefore, though equally revealing the glory of God, it sets forth in another fashion from which is displayed by miraculous power. He goes on to say about God doesn't force His will upon us. We have free will. He does so without violating that. Man is a free agent in what he does. He's responsible for his actions and truly guilty when he does wrong. He will be justly punished too if he is eternally lost. And if he is eternally lost, the blame will rest with himself. But yet there is the one who rules over all, who without complicity in their sin makes even the actions of wicked men subserve His holy and righteous purposes. Believe these truths, these two truths, and you will see them in practical agreement in daily life, though you will not be able to devise a theory for harmonizing them on paper. What he's telling you there, and Charles Spurgeon was a prince of a preacher and a wonderful, brilliant man, he's saying, good luck trying to make sense of it ultimately. Just know God doesn't violate our free choice. He lets people be evil, but on the other hand, God says, all right, I'm going to use it, like Matt said, to serve my purposes. And I'm going to do all this for my glory. And you're not going to fully always be able to harmonize it on paper. Haman was a wicked man, and he served a righteous, holy God and His holy purposes perfectly. And that will always be, I think I've done this to you before, you hold your hands together and you pull the opposite, there's tension there. There will always be tension between how could God allow Job, why would God allow Job, and yet, God used that for His purposes. The mighty hand of God, even though God isn't mentioned one time. So the point is, trust God's providential hand even when you can't see it. No matter how bad things look or get. And it doesn't mean we'll escape through this life, because it doesn't. We may die, we may be tortured, we may be martyred, we may be imprisoned for the rest of our life, we may be whatever. But death just means we just win, and that's all that means. And it's not anything. Yeah, Jeff?
Well, the Scripture says all things work for good, those who love the Lord.
Yep.
So the older you get, and
Yep.
I'm trying to teach my kids this,
Mm-hmm.
is when you're younger, you don't really look for the hand of God in your life so much. It's funny. The older you get, during our marriage, there's just stuff that some of it's just so obvious. You're like, that never could have just kind of happened.
Yep.
Where you were at, the person you met.
Mm-hmm.
And the older you get, you think, that was cool that God did that.
That's right.
God helped us, and God.
So the key is to, instead of saying, God, why are you doing this? Why are you? And again, I know we're going to ask that. We're all going to struggle with that. We're not saying we're not going to be there. But we have to move from the why to the what. What are you doing, God? I know you're doing something for your purposes and your glory. And it may mean I've got to go through fire. It may mean I've got to go through this. But I want to be looking for what you're doing. Because God, for His faithful people, is what? Working. What's Romans 8:28 again? All things work together for good to everyone? Unbelievers? No. To those that what? Love and are called according to His purposes. He works in all things to bring about His eternal ultimate good. Doesn't say it will be good that happens to us. Everything will be good. But He works for good. And our suffering, our trials, whatever we go through will not be in vain. God will redeem it. And so we like the happy ending, and we get a little happy ending, yes, with the story of Esther. But whether like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, remember, go back to that story in the fiery furnace, they told the king Nebuchadnezzar, God can he can deliver us. But even if He what? If He doesn't. So we're still going to be used to serve God's purposes, even if we don't see the end result in this life. And so it's a great, great book. And we're going to love talking about it this week. And you'll see some high Hollywood production here with our stuff. All righty. Thanks for being here.
This world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. They're all expecting me, and that's one thing I know. My Savior pardoned me, and now I onward go. I know He'll take me through, though I am weak and poor, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do?